friends and colleagues, Nishan sort of basically, as he always does, pointed out a whole bunch of issues that we need to deal with to be effective, to, even be able to discuss, sovereignty of the people through parliament. I want to address specifically the points that he raised, some of which is, yes, acceptable. Some of it perhaps need more nuanced answers, because the theory is different from practice. One can say, look, this has to happen this way, but politics is not exactly what is written in the book. It's always compromises. If I, as a policymaker, if I can get a second best solution, I'll be very happy. If I can get a third best solution, I'll still be happy, because the first best solution is almost impossible to get. It only exists in the textbook. So I need to establish that fact, that in a democracy, it is a compromise. So if you don't like compromises and you want to establish the way you exactly want it to be done, then let's look at some other way of governance. Right? Now, sovereignty of the people, the first issue was about lack of awareness. I'll speak as the chairman of the Committee on Public Finance. But even before that, the issue of appointing the committee on the chairman of the Committee on Public Finance, I think, is well known, not just in this country, but outside as well. Because it is the only committee that by rule, by law, by standing order, needs to have a chairman that is from the opposition. Why is that? That is because specifically to counter the capture of executive in public finance. That is what Nishan was talking about. Right? I'll come to that specific point. But why is it that a chairman has to be appointed has to be from the opposition? But as you know, the 2020 government suspended standing orders and appointed a government member as the chairman of the committee. I'm not trying to find fault with the individual, but the structure that Nishan talked about as his third point. Right? So it is not the executive that sort of yanked the power of the parliament away. It is the parliament itself that gave up that power. It is us who said we will vote to suspend standing orders and appoint a member of the government as the chairman of the Public Finance Committee. So don't blame someone else, blame ourselves. Right? Now, what happened 20 to 22, it was... And then after that, perhaps it's back to the original intention of having a opposition member, and myself, I was in awareness. What did we try to do? We tried to make aware members of parliament of the looming crisis. As a matter of fact, it was in this particular hotel that I invited all members of parliament to a seminar over 3 days over lunch to look at the problem in a much more professional way. Try to understand the crisis that we are in, that if we didn't address this, we are going to fall off the cliff. In fact, I had invited advocate, I had invited Verite, we had invited the Ministry of Finance, the Central Bank. Ultimately, what happened to me? A privilege issue was taken against me. Privilege issue was taken that I did this. I fought the parliament. I said, okay, try to prove that I did something wrong, and then we'll see what happens. Ultimately, what happened? The lack of awareness that Nishan talked about exists. And if we ourselves don't want to learn, then don't blame others. right? So, keeping all that aside, now we are back. Even the second time around, it had to be the president who had to come to the parliament to make that nomination. And he has no business coming to parliament and meddling with issues in parliament. That is once again capture of the legislature by the executive. But why it happened, I think everybody is now aware of. Because ourselves, even after the crisis, didn't really want to go through understanding and dealing with the reality that we were faced with. So that's the point about awareness. He talked about promises that are made and are not kept. Now, just now, partly he was asking me what happened to the request we made from the Treasury on all the promises that were made last time and the status of those promises. I just told him that I checked up on it yesterday, that the report has been prepared. It is awaiting the signature of the Secretary of the Treasury. Right? Once that happens, it will come to us. So in the whole that first segment of awareness, I'm not trying to find excuses, but it is we have to look at ourselves as an entity that has been reposed with the authority to manage public finances. So if ourselves, we are willing to let go of that power, then it is us who's doing that. Now, for instance, I'll come to the second point. In supporting incentives, co-opting parliament by the executive, there is overlap here. But he talked about the behavioral aspects for instance, the refusal. He talked about the casino. Talk about the casino. What was told is, look, there was no division called when the casino bill was taken up. True, there was no division. A lot of the time what happens is, people don't really know what is getting passed. By the time the end of the day comes, many parliamentarians are not in the chamber. I think one also needs to look at, how many people stay through the day. To call a vote at the end of the day, there is certain tradition in parliament that you inform that there is going to be a division, which is then the two sides are able to master their strength. That is just the general tradition. I guess you can break tradition and suddenly ask for a vote, and perhaps then if you do, you have to give one. But as we saw, what happened last week was when the opposition asked for a vote on the cricket board matter, repeatedly, the speaker refused to give that vote. Now that, who's at fault at that point? Right? So it is us ourselves who haven't really organized ourselves into a powerful group that can assert the sovereignty of the people through us. And that is because our political divisions, not for anything else. Right? Politically, we are aligned to a particular group, and therefore the objectives, the political objectives of our political party almost always overrides, even if a particular individual MP wants to ask a question or wants to have a division, is overruled by the political decisions and the political positions taken by the different political parties. Now, in the case of the casino, I want to be specific because as chairman of the committee, and Honorable Ranawaki is also a part of my committee, Honorable Dolavatta is also part of my committee, we took a unanimous decision. And that decision was, we are going to oppose the executive. We shall not approve any new licenses and various other things that they wanted us to do unless they were, Honorable Rajakarna is also a member, I'm sorry, and Honorable Veerakot is also a member, I'm sorry, is that we said no. unless you give us a plan that we are willing to accept on given date timeline, when the casino regulator is going to be appointed, we shall not pass this law. We sent them back. 3 times we sent them back. Finally, the president as a minister of finance came to the house and he said, we accept the position of the Committee on Public Finance. And we will give you a timeline when the regulator shall be established. And it is only after that we give them the approval to go ahead on the professional understanding. There's nothing more we can do because the committee does not have any executive authority to tell the Ministry of Finance to do A, B, or C. Only we can request through the Minister of Finance, and if the Minister of Finance is satisfied with our request, he can direct them to do that, which is what he did. And it is a very, very, very rare occasion, probably the only occasion we have seen in this parliament that the executive actually agreeing with something the committee has proposed and directing the authorities to abide by. And I think happened yesterday when a committee, all of us sat last week, found fault with the procurement process of the Ministry of Health, which normally takes 9 months to procure medicinal drugs. And emergency procurements take only 3 months. And they had come for another matter to reallocate some 20 billion rupees from a different account to the health ministry's account because they needed to purchase this medicine. We said, fine, we will do that. But we are not willing to accept your procurement structure. So yesterday, the Minister of Justice appreciated our report and got up and said, look, we want the Committee on Public Finance to help the government come up with a new procurement guideline for purchasing medicinal drugs and equipment. Today, we appointed a committee in the Committee on Public Finance with the chairmanship of Honorable Duminda Disanayaka and several others, a subcommittee to work on this. So there you see, even though the incentives are to be subverted by the president who is trying to yank the power away from the legislature to the executive, there have been occasions, if in our case, I get the support of the committee to do so, to go ahead. Without the support of the committee, I can't do anything. And on a personal note, I appreciate the support that I get from all sides. Not always, but most times. 90% of the time, I get support from both sides. Because at least in the committee, we don't, or rather, we try not to look at an issue as MP from a different political party, but as members of parliament trying to manage public finances. The third point is the structural issues. What we talk about oversight. Without coming to parliament, how can laws be enacted? And talked about Argentina's matter of the IMF. I agree. Argentina went to the IMF, got bankrupted so many times, right? Both IMF and the Argentinian people agreed, look, unless there is bipartisan political support, these programs cannot go through, right? Having gone through the pain of multiple bankruptcies, they have agreed. I don't want to talk about Myanmar. Myanmar is not a democracy. Myanmar is run by a bunch of military generals, so let's keep that, right? But in the case of Sri Lanka, the issue that arose was that, look, we do not need parliament support to sign agreements with outside parties. It is an executive function. And that is how it has happened the previous 16 times. So therefore, that is how it is going to happen this time. Now, while I am critical of the executive, it also must be fair. And in that, for whatever reason, for political reasons more than anything else, the president did say that we want this approved in parliament, which is not necessary given the constitution that we have currently. So in that context, parliament did approve this program. Some people voted for it. Some people abstained from voting for it. For instance, our political party abstained. Why did we abstain? Because from a general sense, we believe that we need to work with the IMF. So we did not want to upset the apple cart of the government not going to the IMF, because there were so many critical matters to have been dealt with, and therefore, as a political party, we said we're not going to oppose it, but we will abstain. But there are certain political parties who abstain for political reasons. But the point is that it came to parliament and was approved with a majority. Now, the issue then is within the program, there are multiple things. For instance, the domestic debt restructure, or bank supervision, or multiple things, taxes. Now there is discussion, there is debate, but the fact is the ability for our members of parliament to contribute in a way that is meaningful is limited, and we must all admit it. I have moments to go, and I'll tell you what we are trying to do to fix this is Honorable Ranawek and I on an advisory board with the Deputy Speaker to establish the parliamentary board. He as ex officio chair means me as ex officio chair of the Committee on Public Finance. Now, we have made a lot of progress, and the cabinet has approved it. The parliament has acted the legislation. Now we are in the process of hiring the budget officer and the deputy budget officer. The budget office will is to serve parliament, and subsidiary of that is if opposition political parties want other opposition political parties or governments' manifestos costed, you can seek the assistance of, or rather you can ask the parliamentary budget office to cost the manifesto. So if somebody comes and tells you hereafter, I'm going to do this, that and the other thing, that will get cost by the parliamentary budget office. So they will say, this manifesto by this political party will cost X trillion rupees. And then that political party will have to say, these are the taxes I'm going to levy to fund this X trillion rupees of expenditure. But I don't see it happening in the next election, because we still have to set up the office, and it is a very, 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 very complicated thing to do. But in the meantime, by next year, we will have at least sort of a small office with a few professionals to specifically serve parliament. And that Nishan was saying, there is no agency, body to specifically serve parliament. And that is being set. And that is, I think, one of the for us. Now, he said those people will have to be, they'll have to be competent. He said those people will have to be, what else did he say? Anyway, but basically what he said was those folks will have to be professionally capable to deliver. So it's interesting that Honorable Ranawek decided that the kind of people we need to get to run the budget office will be at a different salary. That they won't necessarily sort of dictated to their salaries to by the existing structures of parliament, which means we are for the first time going to be able to set up a strong independent office for public finance management with capable people paying market salaries, which I think is a step in the right direction. So I have one more minute. But in that sense, I agree that there are shortcomings. I agree that we need to do more, but I don't agree that that one could apply something that is theoretical in a political context, and that political context must be understood. And if you are in my shoes or in Ranamakar's shoes as chairs of different countries, you really will understand it is a compromise at the end of the day. So if I can get, like I said, a second best solution, I'll be happy. If I can move to a first best solution, I'll be extremely happy. So my 20 minutes is up. I will stop and be happy to answer questions that we progress. Thank you very much.